Back again in Vrindavan. Not only Vrindavan, but the most sacred place, not only in Vrindavan, but in the universe, is Radha Kunda. We're visiting the places surrounding Radhakund during our morning classes. And our hearts are open to receive Radharani's mercy because she's more than willing. Depending upon our eagerness, we'll receive mercy of Radharani by offering our respects to those great Vaishnavas who assembled around Radhakund and offered worship to Radharani in various ways. Here's our map. By the time this is over, we'll become probably quite familiar with the map. So we're going to visit 4 places, starting with those blue arrows that you see streaking across the top, upper left. The first place we're going to visit is right here, and that is the temple of Vakresvara Pandit, and we'll hear about his life, etc. The second place we're going to visit is practically across the street. That's the Manipur King's Gopal Temple. And then we're going to visit Syamananda Temple, Sri Syamananda Temple up here. And then just a quick visit to the Bhajan Kutir of Srinivas Acharya. So let's see if we can fit everything in the time that we have. Here's a map from a different angle, but there you see the number 1. The red arrow is pointing at a number 1. That number 1 is Vakresvara Pandit's temple, known as the Radhakantha temple of Vakresvara Pandit. So right at the corner of Radhakund. Here's a very beautiful painting that's on the inside of the wall of the temple. Here's a closer look at that same painting, and even a closer look at Krishna's face. It's very beautiful. And it's painted right onto the wall. Here's the altar on the right side, and the summer and winter, another part of this. It's not a large temple. It's quite small. The deities appears to be winter time. They're wearing their winter clothes. And Vakresvara Pandit's Murti. The deities, Vakresvara Pandit was a manifestation of Aniruddha, of the Chatur Vyuha. There's 4 in Chatur Vyuha. So, Aniruddha. And we're going to hear a little bit more about how Vakresvara Pandit was a dancer and Vakresvara Pandit was a teacher. He taught a Smarta Brahman Srimad Bhagavatam. Devananda Pundit will hear the story. The deity, just take a look at the deity, you'll see them in their summer outfit. By the names, he's got 2 flutes. Radhakantha is the name of Krishna, and Radhakantha is by his side. Then there's Lalita Devi and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's the altar. Again, here's the Murti of Vakresvara Pandit. Celebrated associate. We don't hear so much about him in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but actually very obviously, if he's Adirodha, he's a celebrated member of Lord Chaitanya's association. It's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishna personally entered Vakreswara's body and caused him to dance in constant ecstasy. Try dancing for an hour. What to speak of dancing in ecstasy? For 72 continuous hours. He would dance and dance and dance. It is said that sometimes Lord Chaitanya would sing. Sometimes Vakresvara Pandit would say, "Provide me with Gandharvas to sing and I'll dance for you." Yeah. Give me 10,000 Gandharvas. Oh Lord, this is Vakresvara to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I will be happy if I can dance while they sing. And here's the Lord's answer. You are like a wing, and I have only one wing like you, but if I had another, certainly it would fly in the sky. So he was celebrated for his dancing, and there's some detail, it's important detail in his life. He delivered an offender. Devananda Pundit resided in Kulia. This Murti of Lord Varaha is found in Navadvip. It's one of the temples that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established, and he established this deity of Varaha because the island itself is known as Koladvip. Kola is the local language for boar, and it was given that name because long, long ago, this is Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, where a Brahmana named Vasudev, who lived in this area, in Kulia, he worshipped Lord Varaha, and Lord Varaha appeared before him. So that place, the island amongst the Navadvip islands, is called Koladvip in the area of Kulia. The history behind Devananda Pundit, he resided in this temple, and he was a smarta that somehow had a fascination for the Bhagavatam, and which means he didn't understand it, but he was a very learned fellow and spoke very nicely, and so many people attended his discussions on the Bhagavatam, but it wasn't devotional. Even it wasn't devotional, one time Srinivas was passing by, and he was drawn to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, even it was spoken by a Smarta Brahmin, Devananda Pundit. And hearing the passages of the Bhagavatam, he entered a state of ecstasy and fell to the ground and started rolling around on the ground. And the guards who were attending the safety and security of the assembly there, the guards thought he was just a disturbance, so they picked him up and tossed him out physically. And Devananda Pundit said nothing because he couldn't recognize a Vaishnava in symptoms of ecstatic love. That was his offense to Srinivas. But Srinivas didn't mind. he went home. Home means across the Ganges to his residence, Srinivas Acharya, and carried on with his life of devotion to Krishna. But Devananda Pundit had this black mark now. He had offended a great devotee, Srinivas. Sometime later, there was Vakresvara Pandit was visiting in Kulia. And when he was visiting in Kulia, he was doing what Vakresvara Pandit was known to do. He would dance while others were singing in kirtan. And his dancing and dancing and dancing was so ecstatic, you can imagine, a crowd formed around him. And as he was dancing and dancing, Devananda Pundit came by, and he wanted to he used his walking stick to hold the crowd back so that Vakresvara Pundit could dance and dance without obstruction. And in the end, he was so moved by Vakresvara Pandit's exhibition of devotion, he invited Vakresvara Pundit to come to his home to take his meal and to rest. So Vakresvara Pundit did that. He stayed. He was invited to stay because it was the beginning of the rainy season. He stayed for 4 months in the home of Devananda Pundit. And in the course of those 4 months, Devananda Pundit became purified by Srivas Thakur's association. He instructed him in Srimad Bhagavatam. And later, much later, Lord Chaitanya came to Kulia after he had taken sannyas on his way to Vrindavan. And here's what Mahaprabhu said to him. If someone eats poison, then he must take ambrosia through the very same mouth. Then the poison will be digested and the body will become immortal by the power of the divine ambrosia. Now let me answer your question. He wanted to know, how can I overcome this offense that I made to Srivas? What blasphemies you have unknowingly made are exactly like poison which you have eaten. Now you must use the same mouth to constantly glorify Krishna's name and qualities, which are like ambrosia. You have used this mouth to insult the devotees. Now use it to glorify them. Glorify the devotees as the best of humanity. Glorify them in songs and in poetry. I will destroy all the poison of blasphemy through the ambrosia of the ecstasies of Krishna's glories. You have unknowingly committed offenses. This is the truth. If you should stop all kinds of offensive activity and simply engage in praising Krishna and his devotees, then you'll be free from all the sins you have committed, however numerous they may be. You will not be able to achieve the same results by millions of atonements. So that's a little bit about the life of Vakresvara Pandit. He was known for his dancing. He was known for his knowledge. He had learned Srimad Bhagavatam directly from Gadadhar Pandit. He spent some time in Jagannath Puri. And so from the time he spent in Jagannath Puri, he learned Srimad Bhagavatam. And so he was a very capable speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. And while he was in Puri, he made a disciple, and the disciple was Gopal Guru. Gopal Guru was given the name Gopal by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, because he was a small boy. His Brahmana by birth name was Makaradwaj Pandit. And when Vakresvara Pandit, gave initiation to this Gopal, or Makaradwaj Pandit, and spent some time in Puri. When he was spending time in Puri, he worshipped this deity, very beautiful deity, of Radhakantha, same as the name in Vrindavan, also in Puri. And there's a very nice story behind this deity. The story behind this deity is Maharaj Prataparudra had a father who was the king, and the king's name was Purushottam Dev. Purushottam Dev, here's the text. Purushottam Dev had a military battle with the king of Kanchi. And when the victory was won by Purushottam Dev, he requested some of the deities that were in the king of Kanchi's care. So several of those deities came back. One of those deities was this Radhakantha deity. It was placed in the Jagannath temple. And later, the guru of Maharaj Prataparudra, his son, so Kashi Mishra was the spiritual master of his son, and his spiritual master, Kashi Mishra, requested the deity for his personal worship. So when you visit Puri, hopefully you'll get to visit Puri if you haven't already. The place where Lord Chaitanya stayed, if you ask where's Gambhira, they don't, because Gambhira is just a generic name. Gambhira is a common name in Orissa for a particular type of room within someone's home. Kind of means like a little meditation room, something like that. So they don't know it as Gambhira. We do. They know it as the house of Kashi Mishra. Now, the house of Kashi Mishra is not just a house. It's like, it's an estate. It has a big wall and lots of buildings, and house of Kashi Mishra. The deity that you see pictured here is at the house of Kashi Mishra. It's in one of the large halls, and that's where Kashi Mishra worshipped the deity. During Kashi Mishra's lifetime, there was only this one deity, but later he entrusted the worship of the deity to Gopal Guru. We'll hear a little bit more about Gopal Guru. And the deity of Gopal Guru, he added Radharani by the side of Radhakantha, so it became, the deities are Shri Radhakantha. And then to either side, there's a deity of Lalita, and then a neem deity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and a very, very small deity of Lord Nityananda. Not proportionate to Lord Chaitanya, but that's okay. And I was told it's really difficult to get a photograph. Somehow I have a few. But I was told by somebody that does this, like for ISKCON all over the place, it's really difficult to get photos of this deity. So enjoy it while you can. Here's the deity in another dressing. You see the Singhasan and Lalita. Radha, Lord Chaitanya, and there's the deity of Lord Nityananda. And look very closely behind Lord Nityananda, there's two gopis. They're a little more noticeable, two gopis. And then look carefully for the far right. You'll see an altar that has many, many, many deities. So here's a more close-up image of the Radhakantha deity. And to Radharani's left, or to our right, if we're looking at this photograph, there's all these other deities, Radha Krishna deities, on the side, called the Gambhira side deities. Now, Gambhira is kind of like right behind this large wall. It's another hall area of the house of Kashi Mishra. It's a very large place. And there's a murti of Gopal Guru within the temple, and we'll hear something about Gopal Guru. This is about Vakresvara Pandit. We're in Vrindavan, remember? But he's very much connected to Vakresvara Pandit. In his childhood, he wasn't born in Puri, but his father brought him to Puri and put him in the care of Kashi Mishra. So you see a picture of a young boy holding his tongue. So what happened was, there was during Lord Chaitanya's time, when Gopal was just a small boy residing at the house of Kashi Mishra, there was a Brahmin who had developed this liking or habit or tendency that he would constantly chant. And he would chant uncontrollably. I mean, his tongue would constantly chant. So one time, to use the toilet, he held his tongue because he didn't want to take the holy name into a place that was contaminated. And Gopal, little boy, saw him, scurrying off to the toilet and scolded him, right in the house. Said, "What's wrong with you? Don't you know that the holy name is all pure? The holy name can't be contaminated by anything. Supposing you died while you're in the toilet room, what's going to happen? You should chant constantly, in all circumstances, in all places." Lord Chaitanya heard him say this. He didn't hear that he said it. He heard him say it. And so he said he's performing the function of Guru or Acharya. So let's call him Gopal Guru. So the name stuck. Gopal Guru. And he was, when he was still young, word went around that he is a very elevated devotee. So Abhiram Thakur, one of Lord Chaitanya's disciples, was, in course of time, came to pay a visit to Puri. And Abhiram Thakur was a very intense person, great Vaishnav. We see him here with a fan, a peacock fan. And a book about his life shows a picture of Krishna with some cowherd boys, because in his Krishna Leela, he was one of the cowherd boy friends of Krishna. But in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, he's Abhiram Thakur. And he was renowned for being able to tell when people were worshipping Shalagram Shilas if they were Shalagram Shilas or not. And his method was, he would come pay his obeisances before the Shalagram Shila. And if it wasn't a Shalagram Shila, it would crack or become dust. And then if there were Vaishnavas, he could examine whether they were genuine Vaishnavas or not by paying obeisances. And by paying obeisances, if they were not, their head would crack open. So Abhiram wanted to. This happened in another place in Bengal, another situation. But he wanted to test Gopal. So Gopal heard, and Lord Chaitanya placed his feet on Gopal's head. Said, "Don't worry, everything will be all right." But he was still afraid. So he got on Lord Chaitanya's lap. And when Abhiram Thakur paid obeisance, everything was okay. A celebrated event in his childhood. Later in his life, as some other Vaishnavas did, he developed an absorption in the chanting of the holy name. And one of the systems that he popularized, there are others that did this, it's a system called Trataka. Trataka is, while chanting, your eyes move with each of the words of the mantra, and in a sign or a carving or something, a painting or something of the holy name. So that's been introduced in some places in ISKCON. I know some devotees that do this, not all the time, but it's part of their chanting practice. And it was established in a very formal way by Gopal Guru. Now, Gopal Guru, when Kashi Mishra left this world, he entrusted the worship of the deity, Radhakantha or Radhakantha, then it was Radhakantha, to Gopal Guru. And Gopal Guru, in course of time, he also became old. And when he was leaving his body, he left the deity in the care of his disciple. And he didn't do the necessary paperwork. So when his disciple was taking him to the crematorium, the place on the funeral pyre, while that was going on, the government came in and locked up the house of Kashi Mishra, saying that the government had not been approached for transfer of the property. They were trying to take over the property. You know, governments do that sometimes. And while the funeral was going on, his disciple came to know about it. And so he prayed fervently to his spiritual master, please do something. The place where the funeral pyre was created is at the Swarga Dwara of the whole area of Jagannath Puri. So the way this history is described is Gopal Guru sat up right from the funeral pyre and he went back to the house of Kashi Mishra and he executed the paperwork properly. Then he went back to the funeral pyre. So everything was made safe. Then 1 year after that happened, some devotees from Vrindavan had come to Jagannath Puri to attend Rath Yatra. And then when they returned to Vrindavan, lo and behold, there was Gopal Guru sitting at Vangshivat chanting japa. This was 1 year after his departure. And so his disciple, they sent a messenger, hey, your guru is up here in Vrindavan. So he immediately went to Vrindavan, saw his guru there, paid his obeisances, and appealed to Gopal Guru, I want to stay here with you and be in your service. And Gopal Guru sent him back. Said, your service is to take care of the deity, Radhakantha. I entrusted the deity to you. And if you're feeling great separation from me, in the temple room area, you can establish a murti of me. So that was done. There's a photograph of the little neem murti of Gopal Guru in the same hall where the Radhakantha deity is. It's a very nice place. Very simple, very kept very clean, very orderly. Now, his disciple, Dhyana Chandra Goswami, was also very much absorbed in chanting. He wrote this book. This is a photograph of the cover. Govindarchana Padati. And some of you have seen this. This is a verse that it's in this book, number 64 in the book. It's instructions about chanting. The mantra firmly situated in the mind firmly situated in the mantra. Such a seamless connection of the mind and the mantra is the characteristic of ideal japa. So I circulated this some time ago, and it's a very nice meditation when you're chanting japa. Because our great acharyas became great acharyas from their absorption in the chanting of the holy name, and they're giving us hints or tips or tools or methods of becoming absorbed in the holy name. Because to become situated in Krishna consciousness properly, there has to be proper absorption in the holy name. The same disciple of Gopal Guru, Dhyana Chandra Goswami, wrote another book that's really fascinating. It's a description of the devotees in Krishna Lila, giving their names and giving details about their age, their type of dress, their rasa, their mood. He's a very elevated personality. Disciple of Gopal Guru, who's a disciple of Vakresvara Pandit, who's an incarnation of Aniruddha. And he has his nice Radhakantha temple at Radhakund. Right across the street from that. That's it. That's all there is. There's the Manipur Maharaja's Gopal temple. The history behind this temple is he, the king of Manipur, was during our lifetime, he was a worshipper of a little Gopal deity. And in his dream, the Gopal deity said, I want to go to Vrindavan. I want to be by the side of Radhakund. And so he took this as an instruction from Krishna. He was searching for a property around Radhakund. The deity appeared to him in his dream again and said, I want to be situated in such a way that when the sun rises in the east, it will shine directly on my form. So that arrangement was made. I've been there in Vrindavan, where you can see, as the sun is rising in the morning, the door is open and the sun is shining directly on the deity. Of course, it depends on the time of the year, where the sun is when it rises. There are other deities, of course. Now, you see in the lower range, there's a deity of Prabhupada. Now, what happened was during Swarup Damodar's presence with us, he had developed a very nice relationship with the king. And the king had a lot of respect for ISKCON. He said, can ISKCON take responsibility for the worship? And so it was agreed. And disciples of Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj became pujaris. So his photograph is right next to Prabhupada's. And here's a close-up of the Gopal deity that was worshipped by the king and is now being worshipped at Radhakund. So it's known as the Gopal temple of Manipur. And you walk through, it's kind of like a small place, and you walk through these different corridors where the brahmacharis stay and the pujaris stay. In the back, there's a courtyard where the samadhi of Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj is. Not the Pushpa samadhi, but his samadhi. So he was a very wonderful devotee, very much loved by Prabhupada, and given responsibility for the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and he did enormous work in his lifetime, publishing, speaking, Life Comes from Life, and other things. Very productive, active disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And when he left this world, he had requested his body be placed here. And so that's when you visit Radhakund, you want to pay your respects to Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj. You can go into the back of that little temple and offer your respects. Now, if you remember the map, you have to go down the street and make a left. And on the left side of a street, well, you can tell a little bit from this map. Let's go back. From this map, there's the Radha Shama Sundar temple. Circled in red. So you see where we were. That's the Manipur Gopal temple. Now we walked a little bit, not very far. There's the Radha Shama Sundar temple. That's the outside of the temple. And here's the inside of the temple. There's the deity of Radha Shama Sundar. And it's going to move into a closer image. Of course, this is winter time. And here's summertime. Deity of Radha Shama Sundar. These are the deities that were worshipped by Syamananda Pundit. Syamananda Pundit spent some time, we're going to hear about his life, and that image or painting in the lower right is connected with a very significant event in the life of Syamananda Pundit, which we'll describe. He's finding an ankle ornament that belongs to Radharani. It's a nice story. So Syamananda Pundit, together with Srinivas Acharya and Narottam Das Thakur, these three were the principal followers in the line of Lord Chaitanya after Jiva Goswami. We'll hear some detail. Here's a painting on the upper left, that's Srinivas Acharya, and to his left, or to our right, that's Narottam Das Thakur. So these three, of the three, Srinivas Acharya was the eldest. He was born about 10 years before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's departure. Then Narottam Das Thakur was next. He was born just prior to Lord Chaitanya's departure. And Syamananda, or otherwise known as Duki Krishna, was about 1 year after Narottam Das Thakur, close in age. But those three were principal students or Shiksha disciples of Jiva Goswami. They were trained extensively by him and then helped to continue the mission and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So we're going to spend a little bit of time now about the life of Syamananda. And we're going to go to a place near Mayapur. Maybe some of you have been there. It's Ambika Kalna. It's just up the Ganges. And in Ambika Kalna, it's a place where Gori Das Pundit resided. And these deities were worshipped by Gori Das Pundit. They're the first deities of Lord Chaitanya that existed. The history goes that Lord Chaitanya had a plan to take sannyas. He informed, according to Chaitanya Bhagavat, he informed but a handful of people before he took sannyas. The first one was Lord Nityananda, and then was Gadadhar, and then was Gori Das. Gives you an idea. Gori Das is a very celebrated person, very celebrated person. And so when Lord Chaitanya went to inform Gori Das of his taking sannyas, Gori Das had a kind of relationship with Lord Chaitanya where he said, "You can't do that." And Lord Chaitanya smiled, "And why I can't do that?" "Well, I wouldn't be able to maintain my life and you'd kill me." "You can't kill me. That's not proper." And he was, had a temperament that Lord Chaitanya loved very much. So Lord Chaitanya consented, "Very well. I will arrange for deities of myself and Lord Nityananda. And when you worship those deities, you'll see me." And so Lord Chaitanya manifested these deities and gifted them to Gori Das. And so after they were placed on the altar, Lord Chaitanya said, "We have to go now." And Gori Das stopped him and said, "Wait a minute. You say this deity is not different from you. Then if that's the case, the deities can go and you can stay." So Lord Chaitanya smiled and said, "Very well." And he went and stood on the altar, and the deities started walking out of the courtyard. And Gori Das said, No, this isn't right. The deities can stay and you can go." And so Lord Chaitanya smiled and said, "Okay, deities, you can go back on the altar, and we have to go now." And then, no, you can't go, you can't go. They did that switching back and forth several times until Gori Das realized and accepted the deity is non-different from Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. So Lord Chaitanya left. Now when you visit this temple, it's a little bit like Banki Vihari in Vrindavan. They only open the curtain a few times, very, very quickly, and then close it, because they don't want the deity to leave. What happened is, through passage of time, Gori Das Pundit accepted a disciple, and he named that disciple Chaitanya Das. Nice name. And Chaitanya Das was trained by Gori Das to worship the deities. On one occasion, Gori Das had to leave town, so he left the worship of the deity in the care of Chaitanya Das, told him to do everything just as I've trained you. So over a period of time, Gori Das had to be gone for some extended time. Chaitanya Das got a bright idea. He wanted to have a festival in honor of Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, a Gaur Purnima festival. So he started making a plan for such a festival. And he invited people and so many things. And it was all underway. And Gori Das came back, and very happily Chaitanya Das told them of the plan. And Gori Das was very angry with him. You made this big plan without discussing with me? That's not right. He scolded him. But it was too late. The festival was planned and underway, and people came. And it was a big, big, big festival. It was, there's like a park or a large open area, kind of like a place where I guess they have festivals. So that's where the festival was, is out the front door and down the street, about a few hundred yards or half a mile or something like that. And it was, people came from all over, and it was a big, big kirtan in honor of Lord Chaitanya's appearance day. And the deities wanted to join the kirtan. So they got off the altar and started going to join the kirtan. And Gori Das scolded them. You get back on the altar. I haven't made the bog offering yet. You can't leave like this. And so they kept moving. They smiled and kept moving. And so he picked up a stick and started shaking the stick and chasing them and saying, "Get back on the altar. Time for your bog offering." And they ran, and he ran after them, shaking his stick. And they ran and ran to the place where the festival was, and they came to where Chaitanya Das was, and they entered the heart of Chaitanya Das to hide from Gori Das Pundit. So from that day, he was now known as Hridai Chaitanya, and celebrated Vaishnav with Lord Chaitanya in his heart. The deities came back and got on the altar again after the festival. So in course of time, there was a disciple of Hridai Chaitanya named Dukhi. He became Dukhi Krishna Das. Now, Dukhi was not from a Brahmin family, but his mother and father were devoted to Lord Chaitanya. And they could see the characteristics of. They had several children that died shortly after they were born. Something like that happens sometimes. And this one child survived, so they named him Dukhi, that he would, not be subject to what his older, now deceased children, siblings, had to undergo. So they named him Dukhi. As he grew, Dukhi showed the signs of a very elevated personality. And so the parents wanted to see him grow, but they were concerned, we're not very elevated by birth, we're not very wealthy, we don't have marks of distinction, so we should just allow our son to make his own choice where he wants to take shelter of a guru. So they mentioned that to him. By this time, he's a teenager. And he said, I know who I want to be initiated by. I want to be initiated by Hridai Chaitanya. And they said, oh, he's so far away, and you're just a youngster. He said, well, people go regularly to take bath in the Ganges, and I can go with them when they go to take bath in the Ganges, and I'll be okay. With some reservation, they gave their permission. And so he went. He went to Navadvip, and then from Navadvip he went to Ambika Kalna. He sought out Hridai Chaitanya, and once he found where he was, he fell at his feet and appealed to, please accept me as your disciple. So Hridai Chaitanya wanted to examine him, so he engaged him in some very simple services, and he saw he's very, very bright and very self-controlled and very devoted, so this image shows he's giving Diksha to Duki, who then became Duki Krishnadas. And in the course of time, studying under Hridaya Chaitanya, who was trained by Gori Das, so he's very, quickly learned spiritual teachings. And after some time, Hridaya Chaitanya wanted his disciple, Duki Krishnadas, to get further scriptural training. He knew that Jiva Goswami was in Vrindavan and the preeminent Acharya during his time. So he sent him to study under Jiva Goswami. So here's a nice painting where he's taking shelter of Jiva Goswami. And to the side over there in that schoolroom, that's Syamananda, Srinivas and Narottam Das Thakur. So he became a fellow student with those two, being trained by Jiva Goswami and all of the writings of the 6 Goswamis. Here's another painting showing the same. And his mood, Duki Krishnadas, was great enthusiasm for doing service. So he wanted some personal service for Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami suggested there's a kunj nearby here where it's known that Radha and Krishna come and perform their activities together. So here's a broom, and you make the place clean every evening because they come at night. So he was given that broom, as you see in the painting, and not just, menial service, but it was with very intense devotion. He was making it clean so Radha and Krishna could come and enjoy in a clean place. Kalpa Kunj was the name of the place. And one evening when he was cleaning, you see in the painting, he found an ankle ornament on the ground. So he picked up the ankle ornament, and as soon as he touched the ankle ornament, his body erupted in ecstasy. So he began to wonder, what's this? This isn't something ordinary. And I want to find out, I'd like to return it to the owner, but how am I going to find who the owner is? Because it looks very valuable, so people may claim it even if it's not theirs. So he buried it. You see his little digging instrument by his knee. He buried it with the idea that when the day comes, I'll be able to show who the owner is, where the ankle ornament is. So there's like an image of an ankle ornament. There's Radharani's feet showing the ankle ornament, something like the ankle ornament that he found. One day, this painting on the lower left, this is from Sadhaputta, by the way. The upper left is he finds the ankle ornament. The lower left is very old Brijbasi lady came inquiring, you clean this place on a regular basis. Did you by any chance find an ankle ornament? He said, well, as a matter of fact, I did. Who are you? And she gave her name and said, I'm just a local Brijbasi lady, but a friend of mine is missing her ankle ornament. I said I would see if I could find it. He said, well, I did find an ankle ornament, but how do I know it belongs to who it belongs to? Can you give me some way of understanding? He became very curious. It's this very special ankle ornament. He wanted to find out who the owner is. So there's some exchange back and forth. There's different versions of what that exchange was. Finally, the old lady showed her actual form, the form of Lalita. And then your service and your mood are very nice. And now that I have the ankle ornament, I can return it to Radharani. And he requested, can you take me to Radharani? I can pay my respects to Radharani. So Lalita did. And she took Dukhi Krishnadas to Radharani, but to come before Radharani, we heard this the other day, you have to be in a female form. So he became a she. Or Kanaka Manjari was brought before Srimati Radharani. This is a painting of that scene. And so some musical instruments and chamara and, those who are serving Srimati Radharani are shown in that picture. Their names are written beneath each of their pictures. Here's another version of the same painting. And Radharani placed that ankle ornament on Dukhi Krishna's forehead. There you see that painting. And it made a tilak mark on her forehead. And Radharani said, you pleased me very much by your nice service. I mean, it wasn't just she returned the ankle ornament. Dukhi Krishnadas was doing it with real devotion. Because we may be given, can you clean the temple room floor? And we just take it as cleaning the temple room floor. But Dukhi Krishnadas didn't do it that way. He was serving Radha and Krishna under the direction of his Shiksha Guru, Jiva Goswami. And he earned the favor of Radharani by his service. So Lalita brought him, and there he's getting a different tilak mark than the Gaudiyas were wearing. And Radharani gave Kanaka Manjari a name. When you go back, you can go by the name Syamananda. And one version was, Radharani said, just don't tell anybody. Another version was, you don't tell anybody except Jiva Goswami. So when Kanaka Manjari went back as now Syamananda with a different tilak mark, he went and told everything to Jiva Goswami. He couldn't keep it private. And asked Jiva Goswami, don't disclose this to anyone, because that was Radharani's instruction. So everything was nice, more than nice. He's had Radharani's association. Whew. And as things go, some of the disciples of Hridaya Chaitanya, coming from Ambika Kalna, went to Vrindavan for Kartik. And when they were there, they saw their godbrother, Dukhi Krishna, with a different tilak and a different name, known by Syamananda. They didn't say anything, but they told Hridaya Chaitanya when they went back. You know what? And they deduced that Jiva Goswami must have given him a name, a different name, and a different tilak. So Hridaya Chaitanya was very upset. How can Jiva Goswami do this? He knows the etiquette. How can he do this? So he went to the other leading Vaishnavas in Navadvip and told them, it looks like Jiva Goswami has made a spiritual transgression. And they said, well, we'll have to go confront him. So all together, they went to Vrindavan, led by, pictured on the right side, Hridaya Chaitanya. And behind him, that's all the followers of Hridaya Chaitanya. He was a very celebrated person. So Jiva Goswami heard that Hridaya Chaitanya had come. He was camped outside Vrindavan. Jiva Goswami went personally to greet him. And then Hridaya Chaitanya confronted him. I was told that you gave a name and different tilak to my disciple. Have you done this? He said, no, I haven't done this. Then how does he get the name? And how does he get the tilak? He said, you'll have to ask him. Because he's not supposed to tell, right? Radharani said, don't tell. And so Radha Chaitanya said, very well, bring him here. So he was brought before Radha Chaitanya, who asked the same question, where'd you get this name and tilak? And he said, I'd like to give you a proper answer. May I have some time? Okay, now really on the spot, because Radharani said, don't tell. So he said, yes, I want a proper answer. So right in front of everybody, he sat in deep meditation, and he was transported for a second time before Radharani. That's the painting at the top. There he is in his Kanaka Manjari form. And Radharani pacified. He was crying and crying and crying. No worries. You just go back and tell Radha Chaitanya that it happened in a dream. And that's the message. And Lalita is going to give you a deity, a little deity of Krishna, because you have such love for me and for Krishna. So Lalita gave him a deity. You'll see photographs of the deity given to Syamananda. And so he went back. Here's the deity of Krishna. He went back and informed, he opened his eyes from meditation, and he informed his spiritual master, Radha Chaitanya, this all happened in a dream. And his spiritual master said, very well, if it all happened in a dream, then if I try to wash off the tilak, it will remain because it just happened in a dream. He tried to wash off the tilak and it wouldn't wash off. So then he accepted what he's telling is the truth that happened in a dream. That night, Radha Chaitanya in his dream had Radharani appear. And Radharani said, I'm the one that gave him that name, and I'm the one that gave him the tilak. And he is a very dear devotee of mine, so please honor him. You're a very fortunate person to have such an elevated disciple. He's very dear to me. Please respect him. And you are also dear to me. So his dream broke. And the next day, he was all chummy with Dukhi Krishnadas, now Syamananda. And he went back. There's many other exchanges between the two. Well, there's not time for all of that. This is the place that's very near the entrance of the Syamananda or Radha Shama Sundar temple. It's changed over the years. This is maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Probably looks something else today. But it's the very place where Dukhi Krishna Das or Syamananda found the ankle ornament of Radharani, previously known as Kalpa Kunj, Kutir, and now it's also known as Kanaka Kunj Kutir. The area where this temple is, this particular pastime, is in the larger Sevakunj area. The Sevakunj area has now been reduced significantly. There's a walled-in area, which is what it looks like inside the wall. And the Sevakunj area is an area where Rasa dance, one of the areas where Rasa dance was performed by Radha and Krishna. Here's a close-up of the deity that was given to Syamananda by Srimati Radharani. Very beautiful deity. Here's a close-up. Shri Shri Lala Lali. Another photograph of the deity. Here's another photograph of the deity. This I got from Bhakti Chaitanya Swami. And the deity is on the right side. You can't see so readily because the large deity is at the center, and they have fantastic worship. Practically every day there's a different outfit, different pastime of Krishna being depicted through the worship. Here's their outfit on the Holy Festival, for example, the little deities. So after all three, Syamananda, Srinivas, and Narottam were trained, all the while Jiva Goswami is having copies of the literature of the Goswamis made ready, and they were placed on a bullock cart, and the three coming from, one from Orissa, another from Bengal, to send back to their original places and preach through distributing the literature of the Goswamis. And this bullock cart, or 3 bullock carts, loaded up to the top with manuscripts, were stolen in the place called Bana Vishnupur. Now, at the time, the king of Bana Vishnupur was something of a dacoit, and he had a band of dacoits that assisted him. And one astrologer told him, there's a very, very most valuable series of bullock carts coming through your city, and I suggest you get them. So he sent his dacoits, and when the 3, Narottam, Srinivas, and Syamananda were sleeping, and the people that were with them were sleeping, the carts were taken. So they woke up in the morning and all the books were gone. So they were in big anxiety. They were on a mission to spread the teachings of Lord Chaitanya through the Goswami literatures, etc. They sent a message back that the books had been taken, including in this on the bullock cart was the writing of Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj, because Jiva Goswami was present when Krishnadas Kaviraj was writing. Now there's one version that says the original copy, without a copy back at home, was stolen. Eventually the books were retrieved. But anyway, Jiva Goswami is smart. He's just not going to send the original. So Birhambir had the books, and when the bullock carts were brought, he thought he'd find gold and jewels and things like that, and he found manuscripts. He thought my astrologer made a mistake. Meanwhile, Srinivas stayed in the area and sent the other 2 onward according to the instructions of Jiva Goswami. Syamananda went back to his area in Orissa, and in a short while, because of his purity and his bhakti and everything grew very nicely. Very, very dynamic revival of Krishna consciousness in his area. His birthplace was Nishinghapur, and he established a temple. This is not that temple, it's just a generic temple in Orissa. And after some time, things were growing and growing. He invited Hridaya Chaitanya to come. He saw what was going on. They made this little strategic plan. And Hridaya Chaitanya went back, and with blessings of Hridaya Chaitanya, he made a second visit to Vrindavan. And when he was there, he established the Radha Shama Sundar deities, which are now in the Radha Shama Sundar temple. And the worship is really quite amazing. Here's a close-up of the deity. As I mentioned, they practically every day they have a whole story written in Hindi and in English of the pastime that's being depicted by how the deity was being worshipped that day. And it's really, really fantastic. Really, really fantastic. And then he returned back to Orissa. When he's in Orissa, by this time, the descendants of King Prataparudra had been overcome by the Pathan army. And in one place, there was a Pathan ruler named Sher Khan who didn't like anything other than Muslim practices. And Syamananda is there in Orissa doing bhakti practices. They were having street sankirtan, just moving through the city with kirtan. So he personally, he was known to be a very cruel person, and he confronted them and instructed them, stop. And he went so far as, same thing, same as Chandkazi did. They didn't hurt anybody, but they broke the drums and confiscated the cartels and threw them in the river and threatened people with their lives. And don't come back here and do this again. So the next day they came back and they were doing Sankirtan again. And so personally the Pathan ruler came and confronted them and threatened. And as he threatened, they were going to harm the participants with sticks raised and stuff like that. According to this history, this is like, a rather well-known history, their beards burst in flames, and from their mouths came blood. And they were scared as anything, and they went running. And then the next day, this Sher Khan requested Shamananda's association, and he told him, how this happened, I don't know. And at night I had a dream, and in my dream, our Allah appeared and said to me directly that their Lord and your Lord are the same, and you've made a great offense to saintly persons, and to you must make amends for that offense, go and personally apologize, and take the holy name by Diksha from Syamananda. So I've come to you for fulfilling the order of my Lord. So he became an initiated devotee, and his name became Chaitanya Das. Nice name, popular name. So now Syamananda is, his notoriety is spreading like anything. And in course of time, the son of a king, Rasikananda, became his disciple. Together, Rasikananda is another celebrated person, follower of Syamananda. We find his samadhi, etc., in Krishna. What's the place where the Ramuna? Yeah, Ramuna. Rasikananda was a Rasika Bhakta, and together Syamananda and Rasikananda traveled in Orissa, spreading Krishna Bhakti very, very widely. They came to a place in their own town, in Singapore, where the local ruler, a wicked zamindar, was known to torture and kill Vaishnavas. So they went straight to his home. Very bold. And when they arrived in Singapore, they went to his home, and they went to the city. And when they came to his home, this Udanda Rai was not sleeping, And in his awake state, he saw somebody enter his room, stand before him, and order him, dedicate yourself to Syamananda Roy, and disappeared. And shortly after that experience, Udandarai considered this must have been some divine instruction. And just at that moment, Syamananda and Rasikananda came. And Udandarai, who was this wicked person, fell at their feet and felt the spiritual presence of Syamananda. And he became a person of different character just by that association, Lavamatra Sadhusanga. And everyone was astonished to see this wicked king or zamindar or ruler have such a change of personality and a change of heart. So now there's Rasikananda and Chaitanya Das and this now wicked zamindar, Udandaroy. We don't have any information about his initiated name, but he became, he became his disciple. Another celebrated person that became his disciple, this is just a little bit of the history of Syamananda, was a yogi named Damodar. This particular picture is selected because it was said that the yogi Damodar sometimes would ride a lion, to show his mystic powers. So Damodar heard of Syamananda's fame. He wanted to meet him. He came to meet him, and just by being in his presence, he became overwhelmed with the power of Syamananda. And through their discussions, he became convinced of his teachings, and he became a very accomplished follower also. So one by one, there's many others that Syamananda influenced, and he established this nice temple and Narasimhapur, and his deity is there today. So all this has to do with, there's this temple of Radha Shama Sundar by Radhakund. Apparently when he spent some time, or some of his followers spent some time, and kept a place where his Radha Shama Sundar deity is worshipped. Practically across the street, this is the last place for this morning, is the Bhajan Kutir of Srinivas Acharya. We saw this painting a little before, the same painting. There's no temple, it's just a Bhajan Kutir. And the lives of these three are elaborately discussed, including the effort to spread, a big emphasis on an effort of spreading how they were trained. So the three, Narottam, Srinivas, and Syamananda, how they were trained by Jiva Goswami, and the effort to spread Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. And as you see, it was written by Nityananda Das. Chaitanya Das and Nityananda Das are popular names, who was a disciple of Janava. And tomorrow we're going to hear something about Janava. There are a few things that are especially known about Srinivas. He is the one who, what happened, how the books were discovered, when he was in the area, and Virhambi, remember, is a dacoit of types, but he was a king. And as circumstance would have it, Srinivas was giving regular classes on the Bhagavatam. And the king heard that there's this sadhu giving wonderful classes on the Bhagavatam, so he went to hear. And when he went to hear, he was amazed at his quality. And then he invited him to come to his kingdom and speak. There was some confrontation with somebody else, and Srinivas just, with humility and purity, cleared everything. And King Virhambir said, I want to become your disciple. Is there anything I can do for Guru Dakshin? He said, you can help me find those manuscripts. He said, oh, I know where they are. Those were yours? And when Srinivas saw them, he was so happy, and Virhambir became his disciple. And, the king, being a disciple, makes a big influence on the kingdom. So he was previously, a little mischievous, but he became a great Vaishnav, and Srinivas didn't just stay there. He came and went, but in course of time, it really helped to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya, or the teachings of the Goswamis, to large numbers of people, because he was a very influential person without all the details because of time. Two other things are particularly known. Well, three other things. His spreading of Krishna consciousness was dramatically done through kirtan. He had developed a particular kirtan style, and it was a celebrated style and very popular, and Bengal. So kirtan style that became very widespread method of giving Krishna bhakti to others. We hear this over and over again, but in Ketturi, which was his home place, he established multiple deities, and he arranged for the first formal Gaur Purnima festival. He invited everybody to come, and Janava came and did the cooking and this and that. And it was a celebrated event. And after Lord Chaitanya's appearance, he came personally, spiritually, in the midst of everybody, and it was this big event. And he had one of his daughters. He was a householder under the instruction of one of the great Vaishnavas, Narahari, if I can remember correctly. He accepted a second wife. One of his children was Hemalata Thakurani, who became initiating guru in Lord Chaitanya's line, a female initiating guru in Lord Chaitanya's line. So these are some celebrated points connected with Srinivas Acharya. And our time's up. So there's all of 6 minutes for discussion. Any comments or questions, anybody? In the room or online or anywhere?
There was a question from yesterday's class, evening class. Karunasindhu Prabhu asks, Bakasura represents duplicity, cunningness, hypocrisy, etc. It is somehow very difficult to not be duplicitous. His Holiness Gaur Govinda Swami says how Krishna is Patita Pavan and not Kapata Pavan. The fear of being judged, the fear of losing association, the fear of losing service, the fear of not having appreciation, all prevent you from thoroughly honest. What does it mean to be duplicitous? Does being non-duplicitous mean to reveal your heart all the time and also broadcast your faults? How do you overcome the fears of the consequences of being honest and also not have the desire for appreciation?
That sounds like a seminar topic. keeping it simple. No, you're not. It's not intended for you to open your heart and reveal everything to everybody, Tom, Dick, and Harry. That's not advisable. It's not what's being recommended by being non-duplicitous. One should be discreet. There are different levels of devotees, and according to levels of devotees, we engage in loving exchanges in different ways, according to the levels of a devotee. You know, as far as revealing everything, you reveal everything to those who are capable of confidentiality and they're trustworthy and so forth and so on. And so there's standards of considering who you're to reveal all things to without reservation, and to persons who are qualified to have that kind of relationship with. But so non-duplicitous can mean several things. Duplicitous can mean, you pretend to be something that you're not. And non-duplicitous is you don't pretend to be something that you're not. Doesn't mean, being self-deprecate and call yourself bad things. Like a kind of false humility thing. So, but it's just be honest with yourself for starters, and don't pose yourself for some reason. Pose yourself to be something that you're not. Conduct yourself in an honest way. Now, it can easily get into a long discussion, which we don't have time for. Here, there's two common examples. One is where duplicitous behavior is authorized. Apparently duplicitous behavior. One of those was Sanatana Goswami making his getaway by giving so many gold coins and telling the person guarding him, you can tell the king, such and such non-truth. And then another was, we already heard it, Raghunath Das Goswami informing the guru of the Majumdar family, I'll take care of finding the Pujari, and then he just slipped out. Prabhupada comments with the former one, things such as that, when it's for a higher purpose, then it's authorized. But we're not very qualified to decide the circumstances when it's authorized. So for the safest for us is speak the truth. Speak the truth and don't be duplicitous. But there may be some special circumstance where it's authorized. Then, in using your intelligence, hopefully the person asking the question has intelligence. It's kind of hard to find sometimes. But with some intelligence, you need not disclose everything, but you need to be honest. So with everyone, you're not like, say everything to everybody. You disclose what's needed to be said, but not in a manipulative way. Duplicitous is manipulating. Misinformation or disinformation to deceive somebody in order to achieve some objective. So one needs to speak the truth, and you're discriminating. Circumstances may require that you're discriminating about the that's saying the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So it's nothing but the truth, but in ordinary dealings, you have to be discriminating about the truths that you're going to reveal, depending upon the time, place, circumstance. And otherwise, you're just speaking the truth. Don't speak lies. Okay, it's after 9 o'clock already. That's the problem with having nice, robust classes, is there's not time for discussion. But it's not, the time is up. So thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.